In the July 2025 release of Home Assistant, they made the voice assistant more conversational, something they had promised to do in their roadmap. Now you can have a conversation with your Home Assistant instance based on certain events or certain states that happen within your Home Assistant infrastructure. Home Assistant can initiate the conversation and you can answer back and have actions happen when you talk to it. So today I'm going to show you a brief example of how that works. Let's get started. So let's look at the blog post for the July 2025 release of Home Assistant. And here they talk about this ask questions to Home Assistant or make it more conversational. Assist was mostly transactional, means that you would say something, you would get a response, it would perform an action, and that's all. Of course, if you had LLM stuff going on, you could have done this already. But now we can do this in Home Assistant without the need for an LLM. So now you can build a custom conversation from the automation engine, which means you can ask a question, handle the answer, and keep the interaction going as long as you want to go with that. So let me just get some preliminaries out of the way. I created a generic helper here on the helper page, and this was basically a generic toggle. So I created a toggle here, and I gave it a name called generic toggle for voice assist. You typically wouldn't do this. You would do something with one of your things like the garage door or the door locks or the doors or the windows or something like that. For the sake of this recording, I went ahead and created this little toggle so that we could play around with this and cause Home Assistant to do things. I'm going to build a complete automation using the voice assist that I'm talking about here. And so for that, we're going to go to our automations. And we're going to create a new automation, and that's over here. Now this create new automation is going to start with a trigger, and my trigger is going to be turning on this generic toggle for voice assist. So we'll start with the trigger first. It's going to be an entity, it's going to be a state, and the entity is going to be the generic toggle for voice assist. And whenever it turns to an on for, I'm going to say 5 seconds just to make the video faster. And that's our trigger. That's what's going to happen whenever I flip this particular switch to on or this toggle to on. We're going to start this trigger or start this automation. Now we're going to add an action. This is where it gets fun for doing this type of work. So we're going to use the assist satellite here, and we're going to do ask a question or select ask a question. So we need to select an entity, and it's going to be the assist satellite. This is my Home Assistant voice. And if you've played around with it, you know that that's what I'm talking about here. This is my Home Assistant voice device. And it's what I use to interact with Home Assistant using the wake words and all that other stuff. So that's what we'll be using here. And then we're going to select a question. In this case, I'm going to assume that this toggle right here is, let's call it the kitchen light or whatever. You left the kitchen light on. Would you like me to turn it off? All right, that's the question to ask. We don't have to fill anything out for the pick media. We do have a pre-announce selection. That's on by default. What that pre-announce does is it will play a little ding, and you'll hear that in a second. You can choose the pre-announce media ID if you want it to do something else. And then you are going to add some answers. This is where when you get the question asked to you from this, you're going to go back and give it some sort of response. A yes or a no typically is what you would do. So I'd click on add here. In this case, my answer would be a yes ID. And you're going to use this for later on. And then we're going to click on add sentences. And we're going to click on, or we're going to say the first sentence is yes. We'll put that in quotes. Not yelling. Yes. Continue to add sentences. You betcha. Of course. And you can keep going and going and going. And when you've got all your sentences in here, you can click on add. And we're going to want another one for the opposite. So something like no. No, thank you. Add a sentence. Not on your life. Absolutely not. Let's not do that one. Let's do no way. I don't know. You can put whatever you want to, or you can even just do a simple no. and click on add. Now you have two answers that will trigger a yes or a no. Now you need to populate this response variable with some word. I'm just going to use response. That's what's in most of the documentation, because we're going to create something here in a minute that's going to take that response along with the ID here, the yes or the no, and turn that into something we can action against. Let me just go back here. We've done a trigger. So when that little toggle is turned on there, which is simulating leaving a light on or turning a light on for 5 seconds, then we'll come down here and we will tell it to ask us a question on the voice assist device, and then we'll give it an option for 2 different answers or answer IDs with various sentences that you put in there. And then now we're going to add an action to do something with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a choose option, and we're going to have 2 different options here. So we're going to populate option number 1, add a condition. This condition is going to be a template. Don't be scared. I always say this in all my videos. Don't be scared of a little bit of YAML. It doesn't hurt to know a little bit of it. You don't have to program an entire something huge thing with this. It's just a couple of, it's 1 sentence really. And this response is going to be the YAML. So response is the word you picked above. But if you choose a different word above, then you need to use the other word. But it's going to be the ID equals 2 equal signs. By the way, what that means is instead of, if you use 1 equal sign, that means you're setting it. If you use 2 equal signs, that means you're asking if it's like that particular value. And if we put yes for our response ID, which is the first one up here, we have 2 different ones. We've got a yes, this little thing here, and then we've got a no. Those are our ID values. We choose one of those, which would be this one. Then we're going to add an action. And this action is going to go back to the assist satellite for our first action. And you're going to announce this time. So instead of asking a question, you're actually going to tell the satellite to do something. So in this case, we're going to again choose our entity, and it's going to be our assist satellite here. Our message is going to be, because you're telling it yes, I will have the message say, okay, I will turn off the light. And then you can choose the media ID announce. Instead of using text to speech, you can make it do something else if you want to. Again, the pre-announce is an option for you here, and you can choose different pre-announce media. And now once you have the announce set up, it won't actually do anything until you actually tell it to do something. So now we need an additional action here that'll actually turn off the lights, or in this case, turn off the simulated lights. So I'm going to choose input Boolean as my device or my action, and it's going to be turn off. If you have a light, use light, or a switch, use switch, or a garage door or something, cover. But in this case, I'm using that input Boolean, which is what this helper is right here. And I'm going to turn it off, and I need to choose what thing I'm turning off. So let's call it the generic toggle for voice ask test. And that's for the option 1. So we have now created option 1 here. And let's go ahead and rename that so that we know what it means. So turn off lights when answer is yes. So we'll submit that. So when you close it up here and you look at option 1 and you add a second option, you'll be able to tell which one is which. That's just for housekeeping purposes. All right, we're going to add, again, a condition here. It's going to be a template. So let's do the template here. And again, a little bit of YAML. So response.id equals no in this case. All right. And then we're going to add an action, a single action this time. And it's again going to be our assist satellite. We're going to do another announce. And we will then put the entity, which is our assist satellite. And we will put in a message. Okay, I will leave the light on. Let me rename this one as well. In this case, we will leave the light on with no answer. Leave the lights on. Let's just say that. Or because answer is no. Whatever you want to call it is no. And we'll just change the name of that. And now, again, like I said, when you look at this from 2 months down the road, you're like, what are we doing with option 1 and 2? You get to see that quickly. So we have our 2 options down here, and we're ready to go. So now we can save this. So let me click on save. We'll give it a name. We'll call this demo. Turn off lights conversation. We'll save that. And now we've saved our automation that will let us have a little bit of a conversation with Home Assistant. So let me go back over here to my automations list. And I actually have done this once. So let me turn off the other one. Make sure that's turned off. So now we have one here. So when I do this, or when I turn this light on, it's all going to do its thing. So let's go ahead and simulate that. Let me see if I can get it to where you can hear it all, et cetera, et cetera. So here we go. I'm going to turn on the simulated light and go there, and then we'll watch it on Prism here.
You left the lights on. Do you want me to turn them off?
No, thank you.
Okay. I will leave the lights on.
We turned on that light, and then we waited 5 seconds, and my little voice assist helper here had a conversation with me to tell me or ask me whether I wanted to leave that light on or turn it off. So that was the first way around. So if we turn it back off again, so I've turned this back off, we go back over and we do it again. Well, it's now sometime later, and I realized when I was editing that I did not restart the recording after I had paused it to make an adjustment. So all of the rest of this stuff that I recorded is not there. So here we are. You might notice some changes to the way the camera looks and a few other things because I decided to take some time and make some changes and adjustments to my OBS setup and all that. So with all that out of the way, let's now pick up where we left off, which is to go ahead and try to turn off the lights again this time instead of telling it not to turn off the lights. All right, so let me go ahead and we're going to do this again, and let's do that right there. All right, so you see that it's off right now, so I'm going to go ahead and start it up, and then we're going to watch what happens on the device. So let me go ahead and start it.
You left the light on. Would you like me to turn it off?
Absolutely.
Okay. I will turn off the light.
All right, so, and you can see here that the light was turned off by the automation. All right, so we've created this this automation here. Let me just go through it again. So you have a trigger. Basically, you leave the door open or light on or whatever you do for whatever amount of time, 5 seconds for the demo here. And then it's going to ask you a question, you know, did you mean to leave the light on? Do you want me to turn it off? You've got a couple of responses here that you can add with sentences that will send those off to the next step, and that's the choose option here. One is to turn off the lights when you answer yes and using one of those sentences, and then two, if you say no, then it doesn't do anything but respond back saying whatever. So there is an easier way to do this, and it's called a blueprint. And under the Home Assistant blog, they actually have a blueprint that you can click on. So if you click on this here, it's going to import it into your Home Assistant instance. And this is something that I've already done, so I won't do it again. And let's go back and let's show you how to use that now. If we go into our Home Assistant settings, all this stuff under the then do section is going to be completely removable. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to delete this. So all that work we just did, except for the part where we actually trigger what we want to do, can be done through the blueprint. So I'm going to go back over here after I save it. I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to go into my blueprints. Now, this is the blueprint we downloaded, or I downloaded a little bit ago. It's the ask no, yes, no question, and it's a script type of blueprint. So what we're going to do here is we're going to fill in these fields. It's going to create the script, and then we're going to use the script in our automation. So again, you left the lights on. Do you want me to turn them off? And then the confirmation is yes or no. Now, let me show you something in the actual YAML of this blueprint. I think, let me see. Actually, no, I can't see it this way. I'll show you here in a minute. This blueprint comes with a whole bunch of already built-in sentences. Probably I think there's 49 of them on each each of them. So let me add an action though. I do want it to do an action, which is going to be to turn off the light. So remember, we're doing that input Boolean as a demo. It's not actually a real light, but you would use a real light or door or something, or door lock or something else. So I'm going to choose the entity, which is that generic thing. And then the answer, you can leave it at done, or you can say, okay, I've turned off the light. Off the light. And that's your answer. All that stuff we did in the first section is now done. We'll do the same thing down here. There's going to be no action here because if we say no, we don't want it to do anything, although you could do an alternate action if you wanted to. And in this case, okay, I will leave the lights on. Now there's one other thing I want to talk about. It's the advanced parameters. This is number of retries. I'm going to set it to 1 because what happens is if you say something and Home Assistant doesn't understand you, or your assist doesn't understand you, you're going to have to start all over again, or it's done. Once it triggers, it doesn't do it again unless you build something in your automation to keep trying until the action is done. But this gives you the ability to do a retry, and that retry will then ask you again if it doesn't understand what you said for the answer part, and it'll do it as many times as you have for retries here. So I believe that's everything here. So I'm going to save this script. We're going to give it a name, rename that. And now we have a script. Now, in order to use that, we're going to go back into our automation that we used a minute ago. So automations, and it's demo this one right here. And then the section where we did all of this then do, all we're going to do is we're going to execute a script. So we're going here and we'll go to the script. Make sure you don't do script, turn on, toggle, all that stuff. You want to find the actual name of the script that you just created. So script demo, ask lights on off, I believe is the one I just created. And when you do this, it's going to ask you to fill in some information from that script. For example, you need to fill in the voice assist satellite that you want this to go out of. This pre-announce, if you have a initial question, it's going to do the pre-announce. But if you leave it here, it's going to leave that in every single response. So if you're having a conversation with somebody, you wouldn't want them to Bing, how you doing? Bing, I'm doing fine. Bing, all that stuff, right? So you may want to turn the pre-announce off. So it just asks the questions, and when you respond back and it responds with the sentences that you told it to respond to, it doesn't ding every time. So I'm going to actually turn that off this time. You heard it in the previous part of the video. So I'm going to save it now. So now this automation will trigger on this generic toggle, which is a simulated light, and then it will do the stuff I told it to do. So let's go ahead and go through that, and we'll do it all over again. So I'm going to turn this on, and we're going to listen in, make sure it does what it's supposed to.
You left the lights on. Do you want me to turn them off?
No, thank you.
Okay. I will leave the lights on.
All right, so that was easy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the retry thing. I'm going to do this again. So we're going to go ahead and toggle this back on, and then we'll watch it, and I'll say something ridiculous and see if it will retry. So let me turn that on.
You left the lights on. Do you want me to turn them off?
Oogity boogity.
Sorry, I couldn't understand that. You left the lights on. Do you want me to turn them off?
Yes.
Okay. I've turned off the light.
All right, that's it. Now with that blueprint, you are able to add the retries very easily. And you also set all that stuff up that I did initially, but just with the blueprint very quickly. So you didn't have to do all the extra steps that I did when I first created the automation. Now let me see if I can show you what makes this script also kind of interesting. I'm actually going to go to my blog post because I think I have this in the blog post. Let me pull that up here, just one moment. All right, so here's my blog post, and that'll be linked down below. All of the answers that you have within this blueprint are there for you to use. So you don't have to actually go and type all those sentences in like I did. I typed 3 or 4 of them in. There's 49 yes responses and 49 no. And so you have all of these different responses you can use to say yes, And you have all these different responses you can use to say no. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff in here, and you can use all of that with the script. You can say any of these things and it'll do what you want it to do in terms of yes or no. So that's what makes that script or blueprint much nicer to use. All right, that's it. So now you can have a conversation with Home Assistant. It can initiate the conversation based on a light being on or door left open, like a garage door. I don't know how you would close a regular door. But anyway, anything you can automate to turn on or off or do something with, now you can do that within Home Assistant easily. And the key here is, yes, you could do this before, but you had to be subscribed to an LLM or AI thing, right? Now this is all done within Home Assistant. I use the Nabu Casa cloud. So my text to speech comes back from from the cloud. So it's very fast. You can do text to speech locally with Piper. I believe it's Piper. But you have to have the hardware to do that. And it may take a little extra time, a few extra seconds for it to actually do something. So anyway, that's it. It's super simple to now have a conversation with Home Assistant. And I'm sure as the Home Assistant team continues to iterate on the voice stuff, this will get even better and more useful. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. And have a great day. We'll see you next time.